Alright guys, I've been asked to do this several times, so I'm finally doing it. It's a makeup tutorial for classic Joker. I'll be doing a rush job to save on time, so this video won't be way too long, and I'm going to skip over dyeing the hair. We're going to start off on making wrinkle lines. These will accent your smile. You'll be using an eyeliner pencil for this. I prefer using brown, but you can use any color you like. Step 1. While ignoring potentially creeped out roommates, use the pencil to draw a line along the wrinkle that forms by your lips when you smile. Now, I like to add a little bit of a cleft chin. You don't want to overdo it or it will look ridiculous. Next, adding guidelines for your cheekbones as a bored roommate does some whacked out dance behind you. After that, add in a little extra smile line just outside the first one to add a little extra emphasis. If you naturally have this extra smile line, make sure it runs along the natural wrinkle. You want to work with your natural face, not against it. Now you'll be adding in wrinkles around your eyes. Once again, you want to work with the wrinkles you already have. Squint your eye a little bit, see where it wrinkles up, and draw the lines along that. You might have to exaggerate them just a little bit to let them stand out. You'll also want to give yourself a few wrinkles on your nose to give yourself a bit of a snarling look. Now to draw a guideline for the eyebrows. Normally I would have used stick glue to glue down my own eyebrows to hide them a bit better, but I'm being a little bit of a lazy jerk right now. In any case, draw those pretty little Nicholson arches just above where your eyebrows are. Unless your eyebrows are already like that, you little punk. Draw wrinkles on your forehead to exaggerate your brow. Angled just slightly to give you a little bit of an angry look. Now I'm going to draw the guidelines for the smile. Where exactly to put these takes a little practice because you want to still look good whether or not you're actually smiling. I personally like to make sure the smile does not extend past the smile lines. It'll give you a more natural look. And now we're going to apply a little bit of powder. This will keep the wrinkles and guidelines on as you put other makeup on over it. Now we'll be adding the white base. I use Nye Clown White, but regardless of name brand, you want to make sure you get grease makeup, not cream makeup. Put a very thin layer over your face, enough so you can barely see your skin. The thin layer serves several purposes. It will allow the wrinkles and guidelines you just added to show through, and it will also allow the highlights you'll be putting on later to stand out. Normally, you'll want to make sure you get your ears and neck to include behind your ears and the back of your neck. However, I'm once again being lazy, so screw you guys. Try to get an even layer all over your face before we move on to the next step. Powder once again to hold the makeup in place before we move on to highlights and shadows. This is what will really make your makeup stand out. I feel it's safe to go a little less extreme than I do, but that's beside the point. You can use a brush for the highlights, but I prefer to get a little messy and use my finger. Apply highlights to the high points of your face, the parts that would catch light, for example, the bridge of your nose, your cheekbones, the outer edges of your smile lines, the top of your brow, and parts of your forehead. You'll use the same white makeup you used before, but since you put it on fairly thin earlier, a thick layer on your high points should stand out pretty well. Make sure to blend it a little though. You don't want too harsh of a contrast where your highlights start. Now we'll be moving on to the shadow. A cheap eyeshadow should work. I use purple, naturally. Feel free to use whatever color you feel works best for you. I start by emphasizing the smile lines by adding a light shadow on the inside of the line, the side closer to your nose. Blend it a little towards the inner side so it's not so harsh where it shouldn't be. I also shade the cleft in my chin a little, but once again you don't want to overdo it. Now shade the sides of the nose. My nose is a little too round for Joker, so I fix that by making these lines very straight and harsh. Now I put the eyeshadow where it should actually go, from the eyelids up to the fake eyebrow guideline we drew before. As I said, normally I should have used stick glue to hide my eyebrows better. Elmer's stick glue works fine. You want the shadow on your eyes to connect to the shadow you made for the sides of your nose. Now you'll help emphasize your cheekbones by shading beneath them up until the point where they reach the smile lines. I'm fortunate enough to have prominent cheekbones already, but if you don't, then make the shading more angular, kind of like the trick I did for my nose. Still, you don't want to go too strong on this or you'll end up looking like a member of the band Misfits. You're not going for a skull look. And finally, this brings us to the eyes and smile, the parts that make you look like the crazy clown the Joker is. I'll start with drawing on the eyebrows. At this point, you should still be able to see those eyebrow guidelines you drew on way back when. Trace over them carefully. If you smear a dark color on too heavily at this point, it's a pain to fix. Speaking of color, I tend to use a black grease paint, but a dark green would obviously be a good choice as well. After you've got the thin lines down, start to thicken it out with a brush movement that kinda sorta makes it look like actual hair. Now for those psychotic-looking little circles under the eyes. I use black and red grease paint, and start by adding a heavy amount of black just under the eye. You don't want to go too far down with it, just to the bottom of the eyelid should be fine. Then, we take the red and smear it in, bringing it just a tad bit lower to fill in the full hollow of the eyes. That should give you that mad look. Of course, being mad definitely helps. Give yourself a few touch-ups where needed, and then we'll get ready for the final part. The smile. You can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned deep red lipstick. Put it on your lips thick like a hooker. No offense, Selena. And use the edge to trace the guidelines for the smile you drew before. Exaggerate the cupid's bow just the slightest, and here we go. Yes, I totally just used a Ledger quote for a classic tutorial. You mad?